Minutes. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We've got a quick hour planned for you on our safety tool storage training program. Hey, Aaron, you want to go to the next slide? I'd like to make sure everybody's aware, though, after the presentation, MSC will randomly pick an attendee to win a DeWalt radio as a thank you for joining us. So my name is Beth Lewicki, and I am the National Account Manager at Stanley Black & Decker, managing the hand tools, mechanics tools, and storage brands, and I'm dedicated to MSC. On the phone, we have Heidi Pratt, who's our National Training Manager with responsibility for our Proto and DeWalt brands. In her 10 years at Stanley Black & Decker, she has spent 5 years in sales, including time in Chicago as a national account executive supporting MSC. After managing the training programs in the Midwest and the South, she was promoted and now manages the entire training team across the United States. On video, we have Aaron Swerchesky. He's a 12-year veteran of Stanley Black & Decker with several years of sales experience, various selling roles, including supporting MSC in the field. He has spent 3 years in our channel marketing department, focused on national distribution and end users just like MSC. And for the last 3 years, Aaron has managed the training for the Eastern region for all our industrial-focused brands. His responsibility, like Heidi, is in training Stanley Black & Decker sales associates, distribution sellers, and our mutual end users. So I'll hand this off to Aaron. Thank you, Aaron.
Great, thank you. Very official. Appreciate that, Beth. It's a nice introduction. So I hope everyone is enjoying their Tuesday afternoon. We are up here in New England, and it's absolutely beautiful out. So it's definitely uplifting, and we're ready to rock and roll and spend the next 45 minutes with you. So with that, we're going to kind of go through the agenda real quick. We obviously already went through introductions, so we can check that box. It's a win for all of us. We're going to go through just a couple of housekeeping items and a little bit of an overview of Stanley Black & Decker. And you may be looking at this and wondering, why is a guy from Black & Decker training me on industrial tools? And we're going to walk through the different brands that kind of make up the Stanley Black & Decker umbrella. We'll go through all that real quick, and then we're going to spend obviously the majority of today going through, or the majority of our time today, going through safety training. And we're going to touch on both hand tools and storage for those hand tools, okay? And then storage leads into some things that are kind of changing today's new environment, right? The 2020s are definitely a very dynamic year for everyone, and our workplaces and how we go about our day-to-day activities and business is changing pretty frequently. So kind of just steering that safety message into the parameters that we're working within this year and kind of in the new normal, if you will. So we'll touch on that. And then I guess next steps. So, you know, obviously there's a whole bunch of men and women and customers on the line here. We want to obviously make this open for other people within your group, other coworkers, and other opportunities out there for us to meet with you and to go through the safety program with you. So what are the next steps? What are the other assets that we have that MSC has on their website? And how do we carry on from today onward? Okay. And then we're going to circle back to Beth. She's going to real quickly go over the warranty and the tool swap out program that we have for MSC. That's a really big advantage that we have with that partner. So she's going to explain how that process works and the benefit to those of you out in the field. And then we'll just wrap up with questions. Okay. So with the questions piece and with that all agenda already said, Heidi Pratt is on the line. She's actually here with me. There is a Q&A box available for you. So if you want to pose a question, or if you have any sort of additional detail that you need, go ahead and put that in the box. Heidi can either answer it if it's a quick one right off the bat, or if need be, we can save it until the end and we can talk to the entire group. Okay? And the last piece of housekeeping is there is different settings, so you can look at different views. I'm going to be showing you some things here on camera, as well as using the slides for to kind of steer the conversation. So if you want to do a 50-50, or if you want to kind of arrange the view on your own laptop or on your own screen to include both myself and the slides, that would be beneficial. Sound good? All right. So here we are. So Stanley Black & Decker, that is the parent company. That is obviously the result of a merger of Stanley and Black & Decker a few years ago. But you see under that moniker, you see a lot of different brands under there. And I show you this for a couple different reasons. There's a lot of misinformation or kind of bad information about who's who, what's what, and where different brands lie. So I wanted to kind of set the kind of all the different brands that lie within our portfolio. The other piece to this is a huge opportunity for all of us to work together, especially now where visiting customers and going to different sites and different locations is more difficult than ever, right? You have to get different approvals, and there's limitations on interactions and distances and so forth. So the less visits that you have, the easier it is for everyone. So with one person, with one of our field reps, and working with one of the MSC field reps, you could touch on hand tools, you can touch on storage, power tools, even anchors with DeWalt engineered by power. So if you need to fasten a piece of machinery to the floor or hang something off of a wall, a concrete wall. Irwin with dies, and then list of Vidmar with storage. So a lot of different opportunities and a lot of solutions with one visit, right? So just keep that in mind as as your days and weeks progress, and as you need help or as you need additional information on any of this, we can definitely reach out and help out. Okay. The next piece is this, and this is more or less our industrial and our commercial commitment. So as Stanley Black & Decker, we have a motto, and it's for those who make the world. That's kind of our mantra, if you will. But if we dial down a little bit deeper, us on the training team, when we're training our sales folks and when we're training our product team, we start with this, and it's our commitment to the end user, right? These are the that are turning the wrenches. These are the people that are pulling the triggers on the drills. And we need to basically increase two different things. We need to increase productivity for you. So anything that we build or anytime we're providing a solution or selling, we're always talking about increased productivity. Right? More productivity for you means more profitability for you. And at the end of the day, that's what makes us a true partner and MSC a true partner. So the three of us can kind of work together to obviously to push your productivity to a greater level. The second piece is safety, and that's why we're here today, is to talk about that, because obviously we all need to come back at the end of the week. We all need to come back at the end of the day to see our families. Downtime, costs money. Claims cost money. All of that is a huge hindrance to that productivity and to that profitability. So productivity and safety is really where we search for when we're out and we're talking to you guys as far as providing solutions and being that true partner. Okay. That was enough of the rah-rah, the sales piece. We'll get into the safety training now. We're going to start off with some general tips, tricks. We'll dive into a little bit deeper with the largest category in the Proto portfolio, which is our hard lines or wrenches, sockets, and ratchets. And then we'll start to get into striking tools, screwdrivers, and so forth. We'll wrap it up with storage. Okay. So some general hand tool safety, and there's probably a wide variety of experience on the line and watching this. Some of this is redundant, I'm sure, but repetition is the easiest way to memorize, right? So while some of this may be new and snippets from this, but we got to start with the basics. So PPE, and PPE is obviously going to be mandated and dictated by the EHS manager or the safety manager within your facility or your job site. For us, when you're working with hand tools, this is an absolute minimum. That's the safety glasses. Okay, so if nothing else has been dictated, we say always be wearing safety glasses. Then you obviously can have gloves, hard hats, steel toe, sleeves. There's all sorts of different additional pieces to that again is going to be dictated by your individual facility and even in different places or different aspects of your facility. Okay? The next one is being aware of your surroundings and of your workspace. Okay, and the way I kind of look at this is there's kind of three different categories. So there's the workspace. There's that plane right that we work on. So are there other coworkers around? Is there anyone near you? Is there flammable objects? Is the area well lit? Can I see the application that I'm trying to complete? Is there clutter? Could there be cords on the floor? Being aware of all of those different pieces that surround you as you go to do your work. The second one is myself, and we already talked about that, right? So the person doing the work, that's your PPE. And then the third one is your tools, right? And that's what you're working with. So whether it be wrenches, ratchets, screwdrivers, whatever it may be, making sure that you have the right tool for the job. And I know it can be extremely easy to say, oh, you know, I need a 3/4 inch ratchet or a 3/4 inch wrench, and it's all the way back in the tool crib. I have this pair of pliers here, I can use this. And it may do the job, but is it the safest way to do the job? No. And there's also risk of damaging the fastener or damaging the work that you're trying to do. So we always want to make sure that we're checking the box here, that we're doing the right thing and we're using the right tool for the job. The other piece that you have in the field are what we would call kind of Frankenstein tools, something like this, right? Or like the picture in the middle on the screen, where we've taken some tools and we've modified, or you've modified them to do a couple of different applications. And we want to really try to avoid that. There's a whole host of different reasons, but obviously we're meant to have both of these open-end wrenches at the end of it. So there could be a chance for this weld to fail, and it's really has never been tested and never been built for that particular purpose. So any number of Frankenstein type products we really want to try to stay away from. Here's another example. This one is this was a hickory handle ball peen hammer. The handle broke and they welded a pipe onto the end of it. Okay? So again, not the safest of solutions. So we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence and we're taking the time to use the right tool. And then the last one on this is inspecting tools and keeping them in good working condition. And this is really critical at 2 times. One, before you take the tools out. So if I store all my product in this cabinet here, before I grab the tools that I need for my job, or before I go out onto the floor with my cart or my bag, I want to make sure that all of the tools that are in that container that I'm going to use are in good shape. Okay? We look at this adjustable wrench on the bottom, and there's a small little hairline fracture. That might not fail right now, but at some point it's probably going to be a catastrophic failure, and the wrench is going to give you. And that could potentially cause injury. So anything like that we see, little fractures. This one is starting where this is a socket here that somebody may have used on an impact. So we start to see this rounding out on the socket, right? So I want to inspect everything that I'm going to use and make sure that it is in good working order. So I do that when I take the tools out, when I'm going to use them, but I also do it when I put them back. That way the next person to utilize those tools doesn't walk into a time bomb with a tool that's damaged or is in the process of. Okay. All right. So wrenches, ratchets, and sockets. Okay. So we're going to see a kind of a common theme, and that is inspect for wear. And that's true for every one of these, particularly when we're talking wrenches and sockets. So I showed you that socket that was worn there. You know, this is a wrench that was used with a leverage wrench where we're starting to see some divots in the middle and some wear in the middle here. We want to make sure that these are going to hold up to the torque and to the forces that we're applying to them. We don't need any of these to fail while we're applying torque, because that could be obviously a safety concern. Okay? So again, inspecting everything before we take it out. The next one is pulling a wrench instead of pushing a wrench. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but the biggest one is I can get much more leverage on this wrench if I'm pulling it towards me while I'm staying planted and well balanced. Okay? So I can apply a lot of force to this wrench when I'm pulling it towards me. If I'm pushing, I have a tendency to put my body into it, and as this was to slip off or disengage with the fastener, it kind of allows me to lurch forward or to lump. I always want to make sure that I'm pulling. I'm going to get the most amount of torque, and it's going to be the safest position for my body. If you need more torque, let's say I'm pulling on this and I just can't break this fastener loose, I need to make sure that I'm using the right tool to apply more torque. Okay? And a lot of guys and a lot of employees will grab a pipe or a cheater bar, and that is not necessarily the way to do that. Okay, that poses a safety issue as well. These wrenches, if you had a gigantic cheater bar, designed to take that type of force and that type of torque. Okay, so there's other options. There's torque multipliers that you could use. There are hinge handles or breaker bars like this, so a much longer bar where we would put a socket on the end to apply more leverage. There are locking extensions and leverage wrenches that can be purchased as well. So all of these lock together, and they're all designed to take that additional torque that the longer handle provides. Okay. The other thing is using a wrench with an anti-slip design, and it's a little known fact that Proto actually invented the ASD, or the anti-slip. I'm going to kind of come in close so you can see this here. There's a picture up in the top right of the screen, but on our ASD wrenches, you can see this little notch right on the end. And essentially what that does is that locks this open end onto my fastener, and it really allows it to get a kind of a better purchase, or changes the geometry so that it holds onto the fastener better. Okay. There's other wrenches out there that have a flat face. This one here is chrome. You can see how shiny and how flat that is. And it's just a little bit easier for that to slip off of the fastener. So ASD or anti-slip, different manufacturers call it different things. Our patent had expired on that, so you see that from a whole host of different manufacturers on wrenches. Okay. So trying to gravitate or switch over to those is a big step and a great step to allowing the wrench to hold onto the fastener. And then the last one in this category is hand sockets versus impact sockets. And it's really a great idea to keep these two separate. Maybe you have a container for your impacts and a container for your hand sockets. A hand socket is not designed, it's a hardened steel, so it's not designed to take the impact force that's generated by either a pneumatic or a cordless tool. So these provide a ton of torque, and that hardened steel on your hand sockets, on a socket like this or a socket like this, these run the risk of cracking or shattering when that torque is applied to them. We want to make sure we're using an impact socket. The question is, how do I know if it's an impact socket? And there's a couple of rules of thumb, but they're not all completely valid. Okay, so one thing you want to notice is typically an impact socket will have a thicker wall around the exterior. Right, so that's a hand socket there. This is an impact socket. It's a much thicker wall. The other thing you'll see sometimes is you'll see a retaining ring holder. So right here we have a through hole, and then on the heel of the socket we have an area for retaining ring. Problem is there's an exception to both of those rules. So some of our hand sockets also have retaining rings. And then some of our hand sockets can also be black oxide. So that's the other thing, right? A lot of people will say, well, it's typically the black sockets. The black oxide sockets are impact sockets, and that's not always the case. We do hand tools that are black oxide. For us, within the Proto line, we do a little warning on the hand sockets that are black oxide. It says hand tool use only. So see if I can see that. It'll say hand use only right on the printed stamp right in the side there. So that's a nice little heads up. But from a distance, right, these look very, very similar. So keeping them separate and having different inventories for the two is paramount. Okay, something like this is a hand use adapter. This was put into a pneumatic tool, and that's the type of failure that you're going to see, or you could potentially see with an impact driver or impact wrench. So now on to screwdrivers. Okay, so we did our hard lines, we did the sockets, wrenches, ratchets, screwdrivers. Same thing, right? We want to inspect them. We want to make sure that the tip of these drivers and the handles are ready to go. So this one here, this is in great shape, right? This is a Phillips head. I'm going to look at it. Oh, looks terrific. Handle's intact. This one here, look at the blade on this, right? This was probably used as a chisel or something like that. So so I got obviously get that replaced. Get a new version that's in better shape. Okay. See a couple of images there, worn, those worn ends on the tip there. Anything that's worn like that, you're just not going to get the purchase on that fastener that you need to deliver the torque needed to fasten it. Okay. You run the risk of slipping off of that fastener. That's what we're trying to prevent. The other thing is screwdrivers are often used as both pry bars and chisels, and they should not be used as either. That's probably what caused the failure on that screwdriver, and it's definitely what caused the failure on this screwdriver. This is an acetate handle, and it was probably used as a chisel, and at one point was broken. There are hammers, or I'm sorry, there are screwdrivers, like this is a demolition screwdriver, that do have a steel plate in the back that are designed to take a little bit of tapping from a hammer. But at the end of the day, if you need to chisel or you need a pry bar, use a pry bar, use a chisel. The next one is, whenever possible, use a vise or a clamp. And I know this is not always possible, but what I will say is, let's say I'm working on this impact driver here. What we want to try to avoid is holding the product in one hand and twisting and turning the fastener with the other hand. If this was to slip off, now I have the risk, or now I have the chance to injure my hand or myself here, okay? But I want to make sure that this is secure somewhere. Is it used on a vise? Am I clamping it to a table? Am I just somehow wedging it into a facility or into an area where it's held stationary and held without me holding it in one hand? That's kind of the idea there. You see vice grips, you see C clamps, so you have a whole slew of different options. And then the last two are kind of quick and easy. Not all rubber grips are insulated, so it's easy to look at those Stanley classic screwdrivers down there with the rubber grips and say, oh, I could probably use those for my electrical needs. That rubber will insulate me from shock. That is not the case. Okay, so if you're working with electrical and you need an insulated tool, make sure that it's labeled as an insulated tool. The other thing is to not carry screwdrivers in your pockets. Obviously, in any sort of movement or bending activities, there's a chance for a puncture or for an abrasion or a cut when screwdrivers are in your pockets. Okay. All good? All right, striking and struck. So hammers, basically, and chisels, okay? Tons of different hammers. I was looking the other day, I think we maybe have, I want to say about 50 different hammers in our portfolio of different styles. And there's different applications for all those different hammers. Do you need 50 different hammers in your toolbox? Probably not. But there are some that have very, very specific applications that will help quite a bit. Okay? Same thing with chisels. There's masonry chisels, there's wood chisels, there's cold forged chisels or metal chisels. And a wood chisel, something like this, is not designed to be hit against metal. The material on this is very soft. If we were to try to chisel metal or masonry, that's obviously not going to work. It's going to destroy the chisel. So we want to make sure we're using the right type of chisel, the right type of hammer for the job that we're trying to get done. We also don't want to ever strike anything with the side of the tool. Okay? Obviously, a claw hammer, this does not have a very good face for hitting on the side. But some of our sledges, if you look at the ball peen or the copper cast hammers up on the wall, they do have a flat side, or the brass hammer we see in the illustration. They do have a flat side, but they're not designed to take a blow to the side of the hammer. Make sure we're using the face of the hammer to deliver the blow or to use to strike the tool. And then make sure we're using additional PPE and additional caution with our surroundings. There's always opportunities for maybe a glancing blow and that hammer to swing off to the side. There's opportunities for either your application or the hammer to spall and chip and fly off. So making sure that your surroundings are clear, there's no other coworkers in a tight vicinity, and that you obviously have the right PPE, gloves and eye protection for this. The last two, this one is kind of goes along the lines of checking your surroundings, making sure if we're using a standard or a non-sparking tool that we're not around any flammables. So if you are around flammables or any volatile areas, we have to be using a non-sparking hammer or mallet when we're in that location. Okay? And the last one kind of applies to chisels, but a sharp tool is a safe tool. So making sure that our chisels are sharp and they're ready to rock when you need them. Okay. All right, and the last one for cutting, for hand tools is cutting tools. And if you look, I think the last stat I had seen is out of hand tool injuries, razors and knives account for over 40% of those injuries. So a huge opportunity here, and definitely something that merits a couple extra looks. Okay. So one thing, we never want to leave a knife unattended. That goes without saying. This was I was actually visiting a customer, and that DeWalt knife was was laying on the counter. It looks like they were in the process of maybe changing out a blade or loading a blade, but it was just kind of left out on the edge of the counter. So we want to make sure when we're done with it, we put it away, we retract the blade, and there's no chance of anyone else picking it up or knocking it or cutting themselves inadvertently. The next one is keeping your body out of the cutting line. And you hear all different things, right? Cut towards yourself. Don't cut towards yourself. Cut away from yourself. At the end of the day, there's different applications, right? I mean, imagine whittling a stick or maybe stripping the jacket off of a wire, right? We're going to cut away from ourselves. We're doing like this guy in the pictures. We're cutting drywall, right? We're going to cut by ourselves. So we're kind of going in the direction of myself, but I'm going by myself. So at the end of the day, what you want to do is make sure that my cutting line is not going to interfere with myself or anyone else. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, and anything in this range has to be totally clear of a person. Okay? So keeping aware of that cutting line. If your blade is dull and maybe you slip, we want to make sure that when that slip occurs, that there's nothing for you to strike behind you or near you. And then the other thing, this is similar to screwdrivers. We never want to use a knife for unintended purposes. Sometimes you'll see people use knives as a pry bar to open up, a paint can, or in here we're trying to open up I think that's a motor housing. That one is like a double whammy because they're using a knife and a screwdriver, so neither of those should be used for that. But we want to make sure we're using a knife to cut, and that's it. Okay? Those blades can break, they can shatter, and if one of those flies off, there's risk for injury there. Just like screwdrivers, we never want to put cutting tools in your pockets. Okay, that applies to scissors and razor knives and retractable blades. Okay, there's pocket knives that fold, so a knife that folds up where you have no chance of touching the blade. That's probably okay. It depends on your facility and the rules in your organization. But anything that's retractable, there is always that chance that a retractable knife could fail and the blade could go, right? We want to make sure we're putting those in a holster and we're not carrying them in pockets. And then always use a sharp blade. I said this with the chisels, but a sharp blade is a safe blade. If we're really working it and trying to cut through material, there's a lot of opportunity there for slips and for miscuts. So we want to make sure we have a sharp blade and we have a blade that's large enough, but not too large for the job. Okay. And the last one is simple to do, but it's very, very critical. That's dispose of blades properly. So you see in the middle, there's a Stanley container down there. Any plastic container like that would work. If at a minimum you don't have a plastic container, maybe wrap it in thick, give it a couple wraps with duct tape to make sure that a loose razor blade is not sitting in the trash can or sitting in a bag or sitting on the counter. Okay, so we always want to make sure we're disposing of them properly, so there's no opportunity for someone else to get inadvertently cut. The last piece of the puzzle. Okay, and there's two pieces to storage. So storage in itself and the act of storing your tools can kind of help create a safer environment as well. It leads to less loss, right? So we don't spend as much time looking for tools, or maybe I can't find this adjustable wrench, so I'm going to use a plier instead. So it lends to being able to use the right tool and find the right tool when it's needed for its application. Okay. The other thing is it also increases the tool's lifespan. So if we keep tools in contained and safe in a drawer where they're supposed to be, or a box where they're supposed to be, and they're not laying out in the back of a truck or in the back of a UTV or on the floor or on a shelf, then they're going to stay in better working order. Okay, they're not going to be exposed to the elements, and they're not going to be exposed to drops and kicks and so forth. There's also the piece of managing the safety of these toolboxes. These things in some cases can literally hold tons of tools. So it can be kind of a danger in itself. So we have to try to treat these with respect, particularly when we're moving them. Okay. So a couple things. When you're moving these, you want to make sure we're locking the drawers. So we have a barrel lock here. All of our boxes, and really most boxes that are out these days, will have a lock on the drawers. You can supplement that with the image in the middle. That is a locking bar, so that rides on the side of the cabinet and will lock over the drawers, so you can very easily see if it's closed or if it's open, and these are locked or unlocked. Okay. Making sure that those are locked and they don't accidentally slide open while you're pushing the cart. The other thing is you want to make sure that you are pushing a cart, we're not pulling a cart. So if I'm pushing this cart there's a couple things going on. One, I can see everything that's going on around me, right? I can see what's on the floor. I can see to make sure there's no other people or lift equipment or anything coming at me. If I'm pulling, I have to look over my shoulder, right? I have kind of a blind spot behind me, or I could trip over something on the floor. The other thing when I'm pulling is if this feels momentum, there's opportunity for it to strike my foot or to roll over my foot. And when you have hundreds of thousands of pounds in one of these, that can be a pretty bad day. So we want to make sure that we're pushing and we're out of the way of the casters, we're out of the way of the cart, and we have good visibility as to where we're trying to go with the box. Along those lines, the smallest little bumps and inclines and off camber, areas can pose kind of a problem. So you got to make sure that you have kind of a set path and you understand where you need to go, or where you need to travel to get to where you want to go with the box. So kind of have a route in mind, or an idea of where you're going, and try to avoid steep inclines or cracked surfaces. And then when you finally do get there, where the box is where it needs to be, make sure that the casters are locked, right? If I'm working on this surface, it's dangerous if it has the ability to roll away. So I want to make sure that my work surface is secure and all my casters are locked. And then a big one, you see this down in the bottom right, making sure that only one of these drawers is open at a time. We do have some boxes that only allow one drawer to open at a time, but not all of them have that feature. So I want to make sure if I need to grab a screwdriver and a torque wrench, that I'm not saving 2 seconds and opening both drawers at the same time. I'm closing one and then opening it. So when we think about storage, this is one of the aspects of our lives and the workplace that is changing pretty dramatically, particularly over the last couple months. Okay? So we see here, this image on the bottom left is pretty extreme, right? That's kind of the worst case scenario, if you will. But we always see images like that on the top left, where there's a toolbox and there's kind of a communal group of tools, right? On the right, we see, this is actually at our facility for making cordless tools in Charlotte, North Carolina. We see a bunch of our employees on the team there working kind of shoulder to shoulder, assembling tools and sharing workspaces and sharing tools, okay? So we know now with the advent of COVID and so forth, that we need to kind of change the way we do business and to change the way that our workplaces look. So these are also two images. This is how we've adapted our manufacturing facilities. So on the left is our torque wrench, our electronic torque wrench facility. That's where we obviously make our electronic torque wrenches. And what we see in that image is individualized workstations, right? So we have a group of people that build out the wrenches. Each one of them has their own computer, their own printer, their own monitor. So all of their technical information is their own. They have their own toolbox. They have their own drawers. And all of their kind of product that they need to carry out their day is contained within their own workstation. Same thing on the right, that is in Dallas, Texas. That's where we manufacture our hard lines. So that's actually the chroming line, where the sockets will be hung on those green racks and sent into the chrome tanks. But those plexiglass dividers on the yellow stands there, those are new. Those have been put in place so that the workers can kind of feel like they have their own area, and it keeps them, equally distant from each other to keep them safe and from transmitting diseases. Okay. So kind of keep that in mind. That it's, like I said before, it's very dynamic, it's ever changing. There's no hard, fast rules, but everyone does need to adapt, and we are starting to see more adaptation based on what we're faced with these days. Okay. So to help you with that, there is a landing page off of the MSC Direct website. This is one that we've worked with MSC on. So we have basically two pieces to this. There's solutions for storage, and then I'll show you the next one is for cleaning your tools. But solutions for storage, keeping them clean is now a big deal. So making sure that on the don'ts that we're not exposing them to the elements unnecessarily, right? So if I have 10 or 15 different sockets and wrenches that I'm using, and I've pulled them all out, making sure that I'm putting them back in the drawer when I'm done with them. I'm not leaving them out, or I'm not leaving them on a coworker's work surface or somewhere where someone else will be exposed to them. So that I'm keeping and when I'm done, they go back in the box after they're cleaned. Okay, so we're cleaning them, we're cleaning the boxes, we're cleaning our surfaces as well. But those individualized workstations is really it's becoming a pretty big deal. Okay, keeping tools locked up, so I know, okay, I've disinfected all of my tools. No one else really needs to use these. Everyone else has their own set, their own products. So I'm going to lock this tonight. Tomorrow, when I come in for my morning shift, I can unlock that. I know my tools have already been disinfected. Then we provide a couple of guidelines. Some of these are based on power tools and electric tools. So we want to make sure we're always unplugging the battery when we're cleaning them, or unplugging them from the wall so they're not energized. The other thing is if we're using a cloth and a lot of liquids, that we wring out the cloth thoroughly so liquid does not enter these battery terminals or on the tool down here. It stays away from the electronics. So just being aware of that, making sure that we're not using a caustic or a real corrosive product to clean the tools. Usually any of your household disinfectants and household cleaners are perfect for tools, power tools. Okay. So again, this can be found on the MSC website. You go to MSC Direct, and there's a link for code and for tool cleaning. And that leads us to a couple other resources. So I'm going to show you a couple other links on the website. But before that, I do want to kind of let you know that we can take what we've done today and really take that to the next level. Right? We can do a deeper dive, or we can cater it towards specific tools that you use. Gear pullers or torque wrenches, or maybe even different types of storage. So there are a lot of different hand tools out there, and we kind of just scratched the surface a little bit today. But we can obviously do a deeper dive based on what your facility merits, right? So we've got posters you see on the right to advertise the safety training. We have quizzes. We have graduation certificates that can be handed out afterwards. So we do have kind of the overall package to go in with with one of our MSC partners and provide these trainings either at your facility, or if it's not allowed yet, we can always do a secondary or separate webinar for your team. The other benefit with Stanley Conductor is just like with the solutions and our sales reps, they can also talk to safety training with power tools. So we have DeWalt. We can talk about metalworking and abrasives and cord maintenance and anything of that caliber. And then with our Lennox partners and our team can also talk about cutting safety and utilizing the bandsaw correctly. Okay? So we really can kind of touch on a lot of different aspects versus just hand tools. So going back to the this is my last slide, and then we'll have Beth talk to you about warranty. But going back to the website, so if we were to go to MSC Direct, there is so if you were to type Proto up on the top on the search bar, this is what would come up. And if you look down here on the lower left, there is the Safety Obsessed link. And what that will show, or what that will bring you to, is this site here that just popped up. And that's our Safety Obsessed site. So there are different bits and pieces of safety training. So if you wanted to share this with other coworkers that weren't able to make the call today, or if you wanted to set up a kind of an internal breakfast or something like that, or lunch and learn, or a meeting, you could address different safety messages and programs that we have. And then at the bottom, we actually have a recorded video that is broken up by chapters. It's about 20 minutes long or so, and that will walk through our entire Safety Obsessed program. Okay, so that's basically it's a pre-recorded safety training for you. So you have all of those assets available to you on the MSC site. And again, I know I and the team look forward to working with you going forward and continuing this message down the line. Appreciate the time, and I'm going to pass it off back to Beth. You out there, Beth?
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Heidi. Okay, so since June is National Safety Month, let's just quickly talk about some lifetime warranty. Now, this is a key component of our tools program. So many tools have an ASME or an aerospace specification, with aerospace specifications being some of the toughest and most stringent out there. But some tools naturally wear out, but our tools are not designed to fail. So, but should that happen, we want to be able to assist MSC sellers and tool users and replace that tool as quickly as possible once the return is approved. And in some cases, we can do that next day. So we have an MSC dedicated process that helps get this done. So as we conclude this training, just want to remind everybody that we are giving away a DeWalt radio, and I'd really like to open it up to any questions you may have for myself, Aaron, or Heidi. So if you type it into the Q&A bar, we'll be able to read your questions and answer them.
That's great, perfect. Yeah, the warranty is, it's funny, it's a little cliche, but we say it's the warranty you hope you never need, because that's the idea. We don't want the tools to break in the first place, but if they do, get them swapped out for you. Anything come through? Or?
Someone asked if they could get a copy of the presentation. I said we'll send out to the MSC team.
Yeah. Yep. So the question was if.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was if they could get a copy of. Will be made available, and I believe there's a recording that will be made available as well.
Yes. Hey, Aaron, there's a question about the difference between a black chrome and a black oxide.
Yes, yeah. So we talked about impact tools and how the impact we have black oxide, right? So we do have black oxide. We have 4 finishes. So we have the chrome, which obviously looks like this, like you would imagine it would. We have satin, which is a little more matte finish, a little bit here. And then we also have a black chrome. So the black oxide, the big draw, there's 2 pieces that draw people to using the black oxide. Obviously, it's used in the impacts and then on the hand sockets and wrenches. The idea is that there's no chrome to flake off on these. So if you're in a FOD situation or a FME situation and these were to bend or round off, or for any reason, there's additional wear or tear on these, there's no chrome that could be left behind or exposed to the elements. Okay? The other reason why some customers like these is they don't show dirt as much. So chrome, if they're out in the mud, if they're out in like in a rail yard or exposed to grease, they do get kind of dirty. So if it's already a black oxide and it gets dirty, it just looks like black oxide again. So it's a little less intensive on the cleaning side. With that said, our chrome sockets and ratchets and wrenches are all aerospace spec. So we hold the one of the pieces to that spec is the plating. So we actually hold our chrome to a higher standard. We went through a massive upgrade in our Dallas facility so that we do have perfect adhesion on our chrome. So even if our wrenches were to bend, you'll see the bend in there, but the chrome will not start to flake away. So while it doesn't necessarily happen on our chrome wrenches, some folks will use black oxide just to eliminate the worry and the concern that chrome could flake off. A long answer to a short question.
A question came up about drawer inserts.
Drawer inserts. Oh, sure. Yeah. So another way to keep your tools organized and to keep them stored in the right place is inserts. So this is an example of one here. So this is a foam insert. Obviously, that was cut out to specific wrenches and sockets for a display for us to carry around. But we can do a couple things. We have kitted sets. We also have kitted modules. So a kitted module would be just a screwdriver set, and the module or the foam is cut to the dimensions of our boxes. So I could put in a screwdriver set, I could put in a socket set, and maybe a 1/4-inch drive wrench, and I can put all those into the drawer and kind of build out my kit as needed. So we have module sets. We have the kitted entire complete sets up to 1,258 pieces, and then there's also customized sets that you can work with MSC on as well. Those would typically include other products that maybe we don't have within the Proto line, like multimeters or electrical, testing devices and so forth. Okay? There's kind of 3 different levels to the organization or to the foam.
Aerospace white papers. Will you tell them where to find the documentation?
Oh, aerospace white papers? Yeah, sure. So question, we have white papers or more documentation on aerospace, and we do, there's a link on protoindustrial.com, so our Proto website. It actually is one of the banners that comes across first. The other thing that we have is an aerospace dedicated catalog. And one of the benefits to this is it will, in the back, have all of our SKUs and the aerospace or the different specs that they are held to. So is it AS spec? Is it ASME spec? What are the different specs that are included for each individual socket, each individual branch? That available for you. And then there's additional white papers on the Proto site.
In regards to rust on a warranty issue, about a one-off situation working with your rep.
Yeah. So a question came up if rust is something that would be warranted, and it kind of depends a little bit on the situation. I would say if it was me out in the field, I would work with and get a hold of your MSC contact and try to get the Proto rep involved. It may be just figuring out a different storage solution for you and swapping out tools. It could go a number of different ways depending on the applications and so forth. But I would just reach out to them and we'll make it work. One question that comes up is about storage capacities on toolboxes, and storage capacities are dictated by two different things. It's drawer capacities. So each drawer or the slides are usually given a weight limit, and then also caster capacity. So a box itself is going to be fine. It's more or less the weight that the casters can hold. So when you're choosing a box, make sure you're kind of thinking, okay, am I putting 1-inch drive, big 3, 2, 4-inch sockets in the drawer? Those weigh a ton, right? So I need to have a lot of drawer capacity. I need this box to be able to hold a lot of weight. Or is it just 1/4-inch drive and maybe some smaller fasteners, so I can get away with a lighter duty box.
That's it. Just a question about MSC selling Proto cable cordless.
Beth, there's a question regarding Proto cable cordless at MSC. If that's available.
MSC supports the Proto cable brand.
So that is available to answer your question.
And then the last one is our local SEs do this kind of training for our customers.
Yep, and then the last question that just came through, I guess, is can a local SPD rep do this type of training? And they can. So we share. Obviously, that's part of my job is to train the trainer. So we get them loaded up with this info, and they can either do it in person, or if that's not allowed, we can do. They have the capabilities of doing webinars as well. So for next steps for that, I would get with your MSC contact, your MSC rep, and they can facilitate connecting the dots there, and we can work it all out together. All right, I think that might be it. What are we doing on time? 10 minutes early. So everyone gets 10 minutes back in their day, but I appreciate everyone's attention. Hopefully you learned a couple of new pieces of information, and the stuff that was repetitive is hopefully important to your day-to-day activities. I appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you.